Abstract. As organizations navigate unprecedented technological, social, and economic shifts, the workplace of 2026 is being shaped by forces that demand both strategic foresight and operational courage. This article synthesizes insights from two major CHRO leadership summits, 150 plus organizational case studies, and extensive conversations with HR thought leaders to present 10 evidence based predictions for the evolving workplace. These predictions span AI integration, people analytics transformation, boundaryless work models, skills based organizing, systemic well being design, reimagined leadership, HR's orchestrator role, culture as practice, stakeholder capitalism, and the emergence of HR 3.0. While these trends are well documented in research literature, the critical challenge lies not in recognizing them, but in executing them with courage and commitment. Organizations that successfully navigate these shifts will move beyond conceptual frameworks to embedded operating models that create measurable value for multiple stakeholders. This article provides evidence based interventions, organizational narratives, and forward looking capabilities required to transform insight into action. Introduction. The workplace stands at an inflection point. The convergence of generative AI, shifting employee expectations, demographic transitions, and mounting pressures for organizational accountability has created what scholars describe as a polycrises. Multiple, interconnected disruptions that cannot be addressed in isolation. Raish and Krakowski, 2021. For HR leaders, this moment presents both existential threat and unprecedented opportunity. The predictions outlined in this article are not speculative. They emerge from rigorous organizational research, validated through multiple data sources including executive convenings, longitudinal case studies, and systematic literature reviews. Yet, as one CHRO observed during our research, we have no shortage of insights. What we lack is the courage to act on them. This gap between knowing and doing represents the central challenge facing HR in 2026. The stakes are considerable. Organizations that successfully navigate these transitions will secure competitive advantage through enhanced innovation, talent retention, and stakeholder trust. Those that treat these predictions as conceptual exercises rather than operational imperatives risk irrelevance in an increasingly dynamic market. The following sections examine each prediction through an evidence based lens, offering not just analysis but actionable pathways for implementation. The workplace transformation landscape, defining the new normal in organizational practice. The workplace of 2026 represents a fundamental departure from industrial era organizing principles. Traditional assumptions that work happens in fixed locations, follows hierarchical command structures, and prioritizes shareholder returns are giving way to more fluid, distributed, and stakeholder centered models. Grattan, 2021. This shift is not merely structural but philosophical, reflecting changed beliefs about the purpose of work itself. Three forces drive this transformation. First, technological advancement, particularly in artificial intelligence, has automated routine tasks while simultaneously creating demand for distinctly human capabilities like ethical judgment, creative synthesis, and relational trust building. Jarahi et al., 2023. Second, demographic and social changes have produced a workforce increasingly motivated by purpose, flexibility, and well being, rather than traditional compensation alone. Gartner, 2023. Third, external pressures from regulators, investors, and civil society have elevated expectations for corporate accountability beyond financial performance to include environmental sustainability, social equity, and governance integrity. Edelman Trust Barometer, 2024. State of practice, where organizations stand. Despite widespread recognition of these trends, organizational responses remain uneven. Research by Gartner, 2023, found that while 76% of HR leaders consider AI a strategic priority, only 23% have implemented AI solutions beyond pilot stages. Similarly, although 89% of organizations claim to prioritize employee well being, fewer than 30% have integrated well being metrics into leadership scorecards or compensation decisions. Deloitte, 2024. This implementation gap reflects several barriers. First, many organizations lack the technical capabilities, data infrastructure, and analytical talent required to execute sophisticated people strategies, Bursin, 2023. Second, entrenched power structures and legacy systems create organizational inertia that resists fundamental change. Third, and perhaps most critically, many HR functions continue to operate with service delivery mindsets rather than strategic, value creation orientations. Ulrich et al., 2021. The organizations successfully navigating this landscape share common characteristics: executive commitment to transformation, willingness to experiment and learn from failure, investment in capability building, and courage to challenge established norms. These themes recur throughout the evidence based interventions examined below. Organizational and individual consequences of transformation success or failure. Organizational performance impacts. The performance implications of successfully executing these workplace transformations are substantial and measurable. Organizations that effectively integrate AI into HR processes report 30 to 40% reductions in time to hire, 25% improvements in retention of high performers, and 15 to 20% increases in employee productivity. Bursin, 2023. Companies implementing skills-based talent strategies demonstrate 20% faster internal mobility rates and 30% reduction in critical skill gaps compared to traditional job-based models. Deloitte, 2024. Well-being investments yield quantifiable returns when designed systemically rather than programmatically. Research by Gallup, 2023, found that organizations scoring in the top quartile for employee well-being experience 41% lower absenteeism, 59% lower turnover in high turnover contexts, and 17% higher productivity compared to bottom quartile organizations. Furthermore, organizations with strong well-being cultures report 66% higher innovation rates, reflecting the connection between psychological safety and creative risk-taking. McKinsey, 2023. The financial performance of stakeholder-oriented organizations provides compelling evidence for expanded value creation. Analysis of S&P 500 companies by Just Capital, 2024, revealed that firms scoring highest on stakeholder performance metrics, including worker treatment, customer satisfaction, environmental impact, and community investment, delivered 6.5% higher annual returns to shareholders compared to lowest scoring peers over a 5-year period. This finding challenges the persistent myth that stakeholder focus compromises shareholder value. Individual well-being and stakeholder impacts. The human costs of transformation failure are equally significant. Burnout rates among knowledge workers reached 42% in 2024, with particularly high prevalence among middle managers who bear the brunt of organizational change initiatives without adequate support. American Psychological Association, 2024. This epidemic carries individual health consequences, including elevated cardiovascular disease risk, depression, and substance abuse, while also imposing organizational costs through decreased engagement, increased errors, and higher healthcare utilization. Conversely, organizations that successfully implement the practices outlined in this article report marked improvements in employee well-being, engagement, and retention. Employees in skills-based organizations report 20% higher job satisfaction and 35% greater confidence in career development opportunities compared to peers in traditional role-based structures. Gartner, 2023. Workers in flexible, boundaryless arrangements consistently report better work-life integration, though benefits accrue most strongly when flexibility is genuine rather than performative. Grattan, 2021. The stakeholder impacts extend beyond employees. Customers of purpose-driven organizations demonstrate 30% higher brand loyalty and 25% greater willingness to pay premium prices. Edelman Trust Barometer, 2024. Community members benefit when organizations adopt stakeholder capitalism models that prioritize local economic development, environmental stewardship, and social equity alongside profit generation. These ripple effects underscore that workplace transformation serves not only organizational interests, but broader societal well-being. Evidence-based organizational responses. AI as HR's co-pilot, augmentation over automation. The strategic deployment of AI in HR functions represents not a wholesale replacement of human judgment, but rather an enhancement of human capabilities through intelligent augmentation. Jarahi et al., 2023. Effective implementation requires deliberate design choices that preserve human agency while leveraging computational advantages in pattern recognition, data processing, and scenario modeling. Research demonstrates that AI delivers greatest value when applied to well defined, data rich processes where speed and consistency matter, while humans retain responsibility for ambiguous situations requiring contextual judgment, ethical reasoning, and empathetic response. Raish and Krakowski, 2021. This division of labor optimizes both efficiency and quality. Effective AI augmentation approaches include intelligent screening and matching AI systems analyze candidate profiles, work samples, and assessment data to surface high potential matches, while HR professionals conduct nuanced cultural fit evaluations and handle sensitive communications. Predictive retention, modeling machine learning algorithms, identify flight risk patterns across multiple variables, enabling HR business partners to proactively intervene with at-risk high performers through personalized retention conversations. Personalized learning pathways AI engines recommend development content based on individual skill profiles, career aspirations, and learning preferences, while managers provide coaching, accountability, and context specific guidance. Sentiment analysis and well-being monitoring natural language processing tools detect emerging engagement issues through employee communications, prompting human-led listening sessions and targeted interventions before problems escalate. Administrative automation chatbots and workflow automation handle routine transactions, PTO requests, policy questions, onboarding logistics, freeing HR practitioners for strategic, relationship-intensive work. Unilever implemented an AI augmented recruitment process that combines automated screening, gamified assessments, and video interview analysis with human decision making at critical junctures. The hybrid approach reduced time to hire by 75%, improved candidate experience scores by 35%, and increased demographic diversity of new hires by 16% while maintaining quality of hire metrics. Bersin, 2023. Critically, Unilever preserved human judgment for final selection decisions and designed transparency mechanisms to ensure candidates understood how AI influenced their process. The most sophisticated implementations embed ethical guardrails, including algorithmic audits for bias, human in the loop decision protocols for high stakes outcomes, and robust data governance frameworks. Organizations that view AI as a co pilot rather than autopilot create sustainable competitive advantage while managing algorithmic risks. People analytics as AI powered strategic compass. The maturation of people analytics from descriptive reporting to predictive and prescriptive insights marks a fundamental shift in HR's strategic contribution. Bersin, 2023. Leading organizations leverage AI enhanced analytics to anticipate workforce needs, identify intervention opportunities, and measure impact with the rigor applied to financial and operational metrics. This evolution requires more than technological investment. It demands cultural change toward data informed decision making, capability development in statistical literacy, and integration of people data with business performance indicators. The payoff comes when analytics transition from retrospective dashboards to forward looking strategic intelligence. High impact analytics applications include workforce planning and scenario modeling predictive algorithms forecast future skill demands based on business strategy, market trends, and technological change, enabling proactive talent development and acquisition. Performance and potential assessment multi source data integration, performance ratings, peer feedback, skill assessments, project outcomes, provides nuanced talent profiles that surface high potential individuals often missed by traditional review processes. Network analysis and collaboration optimization, organizational network analysis, identifies informal influencers, knowledge brokers, and collaboration bottlenecks, informing leadership development and structural redesign. Equity and inclusion measurement, disaggregated analytics across demographic dimensions, reveal systemic disparities in hiring, promotion, compensation, and retention, creating accountability for inclusion outcomes. Well-being and engagement drivers, advanced analytics isolate specific factors, manager behaviors, workload patterns, role clarity, development opportunities that predict engagement and burnout, enabling targeted interventions. Microsoft developed a people analytics capability that combines internal workforce data with external labor market intelligence, AI powered predictive modeling, and experimentation methodologies. This approach enables evidence based decisions on everything from compensation strategies to organizational design. When analytics revealed that employees with diverse team experiences advanced faster and reported higher satisfaction, Microsoft redesigned project assignments to intentionally create cross functional exposure, resulting in measurable improvements in both retention and innovation metrics. Deloitte, 2024. The transformation from reactive to proactive HR requires analytics that answer not just what happened, but what will happen and what should we do. Organizations achieving this maturity gain substantial strategic advantage through better workforce decisions. Workplace without boundaries, fluid work models. The proliferation of hybrid, remote, distributed, and gig work arrangements reflects fundamental reconsideration of when, where, and how work gets accomplished. Grattan, 2021. Rather than reverting to pre pandemic norms, leading organizations are designing intentional flexibility models that balance autonomy with connection, productivity with collaboration, and individual preference with collective needs. Effective boundary-less work requires more than location policy. It demands rethinking performance management, shifting from presence to outcomes, communication norms, establishing synchronous versus asynchronous protocols, technology infrastructure, enabling seamless collaboration across contexts, and leadership practices, building trust without proximity. Successful flexible work strategies include differentiated flexibility models, tailoring work arrangements to role requirements and team needs rather than one size fits all policies, with clear criteria for remote eligibility and transparent decision processes. Intentional collaboration design, identifying which activities benefit from in person interaction, creative brainstorming, relationship building, sensitive conversations, and protecting synchronous time for high value collaboration while enabling asynchronous work for focused individual tasks. Digital first operating model designing processes, communications, and decision making for digital contexts as default, ensuring remote workers access the same information, opportunities, and influence as office based colleagues. Boundary management support providing tools, training, and norms that help employees create healthy boundaries between work and personal life in distributed contexts, where physical separation no longer serves this function. Equity in advancement, proactively monitoring whether remote workers receive equitable access to stretch assignments, sponsorship, and promotion opportunities, countering proximity bias that favors office presence. Salesforce implemented a success from anywhere model that categorizes roles into three flexibility tiers based on work requirements rather than hierarchy or tenure. Employees receive transparency about classification criteria, managers receive training on distributed leadership, and the company invested in reimagined office spaces designed for collaboration rather than individual desks. Results include 25% improvement in employee satisfaction with work life integration, 30% reduction in real estate costs, and expanded access to talent in previously underserved geographies. Gartner, 2023. The critical insight from successful implementations is that flexibility done well requires intentional design, not passive accommodation. Organizations that thoughtfully architect boundaryless work models unlock productivity and well-being gains, while those treating it as a perk or reluctant concession struggle with fragmentation and inequity. Skills over jobs, the rise of skills-based organizations. The shift from job-based to skills-based talent management reflects recognition that rigid job descriptions cannot keep pace with rapidly evolving work demands, particularly as AI automates specific tasks while creating needs for new capabilities. Deloitte, 2024. Skills-based organizing enables greater agility in deploying talent, faster response to capability gaps, and enhanced employee development through varied experiences. This transformation requires fundamental changes to hiring, assessing capabilities rather than credentials, career paths, enabling lateral and diagonal movement based on skill acquisition, learning, personalizing development to individual capability profiles, and workforce planning, forecasting skill needs independent of fixed roles. Effective skills-based approaches include granular skills taxonomy, developing comprehensive inventories of capabilities required across the organization, with standardized definitions and proficiency levels that enable comparison and gap analysis. Skills-based hiring prioritizing demonstrated capabilities and potential over educational pedigree or prior job titles, using work samples, assessments, and portfolio reviews to evaluate fit. Internal talent marketplace creating platforms where employees indicate skill development interests and managers post project opportunities, enabling matching based on capabilities and aspirations rather than formal reporting structures. Skills based learning personalizing development pathways based on individual skill profiles, career goals, and organizational needs, with micro credentials and stackable certifications recognizing incremental capability building. Transparent mobility pathways, articulating skill requirements for various roles and illustrating multiple pathways to achieve them, enabling employees to visualize career possibilities beyond linear progression. Unilever pioneered a skills based approach by eliminating university degree requirements for entry level positions, instead, assessing candidates through gamified simulations and digital assessments, measuring cognitive ability, problem solving, and learning agility. This shift expanded the talent pool by 50%, improved candidate diversity, and enhanced quality of hire as measured by first year performance ratings. The company subsequently extended skills based principles to internal mobility, creating a talent marketplace where 20% of positions are now filled through internal skill based matching rather than traditional job postings. Bersin, 2023. The transition to skills based organizing presents implementation challenges, including data infrastructure requirements, manager capability development, and employee mindset shifts. However, organizations successfully navigating this transformation report substantial gains in agility, innovation, and talent optimization. Well-being by design, from programs to systems. The evolution from episodic well-being initiatives to systemic well-being integration represents recognition that sustainable human performance requires attending to holistic employee needs. Physical, mental, emotional, financial, and social. McKinsey, 2023. Programmatic approaches, free yoga, mindfulness apps, occasional wellness challenges, yield minimal impact when core work design undermines well-being through excessive workload, role ambiguity, toxic relationships, or inequitable treatment. Well-being by design embeds consideration of human needs into fundamental organizational choices about work allocation, performance expectations, leadership behaviors, and culture norms. This approach addresses root causes rather than symptoms, creating conditions where well-being emerges naturally rather than requiring remedial interventions. Systemic well-being strategies include workload management and prioritization, establishing realistic capacity planning, creating transparency about work volume and deadlines, and empowering teams to negotiate priorities rather than absorbing infinite demands. Manager capability and accountability developing managers as well-being champions through training in empathetic leadership, psychological safety, and early intervention for struggling team members, with manager effectiveness measured partly by team well-being outcomes. Flexibility and autonomy providing genuine control over work schedules, methods, and location where feasible, recognizing autonomy as a fundamental human need and well-being driver. Social connection and belonging intentionally designing opportunities for relationship building, fostering inclusive environments where diverse employees feel valued, and addressing isolation in distributed work contexts. Financial well-being support offering fair compensation, retirement planning resources, emergency savings programs, and student debt assistance that address employees' economic security needs. Data-driven well-being monitoring using engagement surveys, sentiment analysis, absence patterns, and health metrics to identify well-being risks and intervention opportunities, with disaggregated analysis revealing differential impacts across employee populations. Microsoft implemented well-being by design principles by establishing no meeting Fridays to provide protected focus time, limiting after-hours communications through Outlook features that discourage late-night emails, and incorporating well-being metrics into manager scorecards. These structural interventions complemented traditional programs, mental health resources, fitness benefits, and yielded measurable improvements. 54% reduction in after-hours work time, 30% decrease in self-reported stress, and 20% improvement in work-life balance scores. Gartner, 2023. The organizations achieving greatest well-being impact treat it as a strategic imperative measured and managed with the same rigor as financial performance, safety, or quality. This requires executive commitment, resource allocation, and willingness to make difficult trade-offs when well-being conflicts with short-term productivity pressures. Building long-term organizational capability for sustained excellence. Psychological contract recalibration, rebuilding trust through reciprocity. The traditional employment relationship, job security and steady advancement in exchange for loyalty and compliance, has eroded, yet organizations and employees still operate with mismatched expectations. Rousseau, 2021. The new psychological contract centers on mutual development, transparency, and shared value creation, requiring explicit negotiation rather than assumed understanding. Organizations that thrive will clearly articulate what they offer: development opportunities, flexibility, purpose alignment, fair treatment, and what they expect: performance, adaptability, continuous learning, then consistently deliver on commitments. This builds the trust essential for discretionary effort, innovation, and resilience during adversity. Three practices support psychological contract recalibration. First, transparent communication about business realities, strategic choices, and their implications for employees reduces ambiguity and cynicism. Second, employee voice mechanisms that genuinely influence decisions, demonstrate respect, and unlock valuable insights. Third, reciprocal accountability, where leaders model expected behaviors and face consequences for failures, builds credibility that policies alone cannot achieve. Distributed leadership structures, expanding agency and accountability. Hierarchical, command and control leadership models increasingly fail in complex, rapidly changing environments where effective responses require local knowledge and rapid adaptation. Ulbayan and Arena, 2018. Distributed leadership models push decision authority, accountability, and resources closer to customer-facing teams and domain experts, enabling faster response and greater innovation. This shift requires substantial capability building, particularly among middle managers who transition from directing work to enabling teams and frontline employees who assume expanded authority. Organizations must invest in decision-making frameworks, financial literacy, strategic thinking, and conflict resolution skills throughout the workforce. Successful distributed leadership implementations establish clear boundaries within which teams exercise autonomy, decision rights, resource allocation, hiring authority, create transparency mechanisms that enable coordination across distributed decision makers, and develop coaching capabilities among senior leaders who shift from solving problems to building problem-solving capacity in others. Purpose and belonging, activating intrinsic motivation at scale. Purpose, the conviction that one's work contributes to meaningful outcomes beyond profit, consistently emerges as a key driver of engagement, performance, and retention across demographic groups. Grattan, 2021. Yet many organizations struggle to translate corporate purpose statements into daily experiences that emotionally connect employees to impact. Activating purpose requires several elements. First, clarity and authenticity about organizational mission that extends beyond shareholder returns to encompass societal contribution. Second, line of sight connections between individual roles and ultimate impact, helping every employee understand how their work matters. Third, opportunities to contribute to purpose through meaningful projects, community involvement, or sustainability initiatives. Fourth, leadership storytelling that brings purpose to life through compelling narratives rather than abstract values. Belonging, the experience of being valued, accepted, and able to bring one's full self to work, complements purpose as an intrinsic motivator. Edelman Trust Barometer, 2024. Organizations that foster belonging create psychological safety, where diverse perspectives are welcomed, difference is celebrated rather than merely tolerated, and all employees access development opportunities and advancement pathways regardless of background. This requires ongoing attention to inclusion behaviors, equitable systems, and accountability for creating conditions where everyone thrives. Conclusion. The workplace of 2026 will be defined not by those who recognize these 10 predictions, but by those who execute them with courage and commitment. The gap between insight and impact, between conceptual frameworks and embedded operating models, separates organizations that flourish from those that flounder. Several themes unite these predictions. First, the integration of technology with humanity, leveraging AI's computational power while preserving distinctly human capabilities around judgment, creativity, and care. Second, the shift from controlling to enabling, distributing authority and trusting employees with autonomy while providing clarity about expectations and boundaries. Third, the expansion from shareholder primacy to stakeholder value, recognizing that sustainable success requires attending to employee well being, customer needs, community impacts, and environmental stewardship alongside financial returns. The path forward demands several organizational capabilities: courage to challenge legacy assumptions and entrench power structures, capability to execute sophisticated people strategies through analytics, technology, and process excellence, and commitment to sustained transformation rather than episodic initiatives. HR functions must evolve from service providers to strategic architects, from policy enforcers to ecosystem orchestrators, and from operational executors to value creators. The organizations that successfully navigate these transitions will secure substantial competitive advantage through enhanced innovation, superior talent retention, stronger stakeholder trust, and ultimately better business performance. Those that treat these predictions as interesting trends, rather than operational imperatives, risk irrelevance in an increasingly dynamic marketplace, where talent chooses employers based on values alignment, development opportunities, and well being support as much as compensation. The future of work is not something that happens to organizations. It is something organizations actively create through daily choices about technology deployment, work design, leadership development, and culture building. The question is not whether these predictions will define 2026, but whether your organization will lead or follow in bringing them to life.